darkmyths.org and Neapolis Media Group proudly present to you the Lone Gunman Podcast, featuring your host, Rob Clark, where research comes to shine and myths come to die. Stay tuned. Be right there.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is episode number 163 of the Lone Gunman Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Clark, and joining me today is proprietor of the Neapolis Media Group and noted author of the books Two Princes and a King and Human Time Bomb, recently released a week ago. Carmine Savastano comes back to the show. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Rob. How you doing, man?
I'm fantastic, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. Like you said, I just got the new book out, so that's good. It's finally, trying to get it out there to everybody to take a look at it. And I wrote some new articles that we had talked about a little bit off air on Mexico City, and I thought we could talk about some of them and some of the information I come up with in the research that I think changes things as far as some portions of what officials have always tried to present to people as what happened in Mexico City.
Yeah, and congratulations on the new book. I know you've been working hard on it over the past year, and that's why we haven't seen much of it. But hey, you got to stay busy, right?
Yep, try to anyway.
And like you said, we're going to get into some of this Mexico City stuff. I think this is part of the assassination milieu that I freaking hate the most because there's just so much murkiness in the waters when it comes to Mexico City. Was Oswald really there? Was it an imposter? Yada, yada, yada. Why are the Russians saying what they're saying? Why are the Cubans saying what they're saying? Why are the Americans saying what they're saying? What's the real truth here? And hopefully we'll be able to get to the bottom of a little bit more of it today after we speak with you, sir.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I definitely know that it'll be for some new information. And at least I think that I have presented a new view to all of it so you can see it a little more clearly rather than the mixture that's often presented. And I think there's been really good work done before, like by people that we've both talked to, like Bill Simpich and others that have.
Right. I mean, you can have people say definitively, okay, Oswald was never there. We have proof. There's no actual proof that Oswald was ever in Mexico City whatsoever. But then you have people on the other side saying, well, then explain this. How can you explain that? We have his signature here. We have eyewitnesses here, and then.
Yeah, and then they'll say the opposite side will, the side that supports officials will, as you said, they'll contend that he made all of the visits. And neither of those things is likely, that he made none or that he made all. It's possible.
Because we have these.
Or he made all, but that's not likely based on most of the evidence.
Right, because we haven't. Supposedly Hoover heard an audio tape and said, well, that wasn't Oswald, but we don't have the tape anymore to listen to. Everything the CIA recorded on their video camera was not.
Yeah, the photography was all supposedly nothing. They had no pictures of him, and it was destroyed. And then same with the tapes.
Well, they had pictures of persons identified as Oswald that weren't Oswald.
Yeah.
And then people would say, well, how much can you really trust the CIA? Well, there you go. I think if he wasn't in Mexico, then where was he? And it goes on and on.
Yeah, well, I think that one distinction that should be made is that we might not be able to trust what the company line is of the CIA when they're trying to cover things up, but we can trust the internal documents they had no knowledge of us having access to. Yeah, documents can be changed, and we can actually usually prove if there is alteration, but using other documents. So it is kind of the foundational basis of being able to prove what is either correct or incorrect about the official narrative.
Right. Now, I know part of the official narrative is Oswald had written a series of letters, I think dating back to the spring of 1963 to the Russian embassy, stating his desire to, or for him and his wife and family to return to the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
And then
yeah, the embassy
as
in
the year
Washington.
went on, it became, okay, well, obviously they're not going to let me back in, but maybe they'll let Marina back in. And why he wanted to send, or why she wanted to go home, or why he wanted to send her home is not really apparent. And then this whole Mexico City thing, is supposedly about Oswald trying to get back to Russia via Cuba from Mexico instead of the United States. And apparently he thought, well, since he lived there before, since he had a Russian wife, that it wouldn't be this much of a process. But apparently, in Mexico City, he was faced with, well, there's a big long waiting process. We have to get word from Moscow. It's not going to happen today. But then you kind of think that it kind of smells a little bit of, uh, trying to paint him in a certain light before the assassination actually occurs.
Implicate him in illegality.
Yeah, because I mean, his actions, his supposed actions in Mexico City don't really make a whole lot of sense.
It's
Especially,
almost like there's more than one person.
imagine that. Imagine that. So let's get into what the documents tell us, Carmine.
Okay. So yeah. Yeah, basically just to generally set it up for everybody so they know before we take anything apart, I want them to know what exists currently. And that is,
yes.
According to U.S. officials, based on tapes that were destroyed and photographs that were either destroyed, suppressed, or unavailable due to multiple cameras malfunctioning, Lee Harvey Oswald, officials said, went to the Cuban consulate in the diplomatic compound on September 27th, 1963. They state, based on incongruent statements from KGB officials, translator interpretation, and contending intelligence sources, that Lee Harvey Oswald visited this place that day. The official narrative seeking to connect Mexico City to the JFK assassination and thus potentially the Cuban and Soviet governments rests upon connecting Oswald to these communist embassy compound, or to these communist diplomatic compounds. So the relevant account begins with a man identifying himself as Lee Harvey Oswald, who entered the Cuban embassy in Mexico City, the Cuban consulate in Mexico City, and requested then, and then subsequently demanded a visa to Cuba and sought to get to the Soviet Union from there. In the course of events, this individual would argue with consulate employee Sylvia Duran and Consul Eusebio Azque, until Azque directed him to leave. This person was aware of some of Oswald's biographic details, such as claims to be in the Fair Play for Cuba committee. He said that he prior lived in the Soviet Union, said that he had a Russian wife. However, this, quote, Oswald, also produced a Communist Party membership card. And those documents were not legal in Mexico. And beyond that, Oswald had always stated, you can go to the evidence, it's all over the place, that he was never a member of the Communist Party. There was no proof that he had ever joined it in the United States. There was no connection to the Communist Party. In interviews, he even said, I am a Marxist-Leninist, not a communist.
Right.
So the appearance of that card that he never possessed is something notable. And it in itself, because it's illegal in Mexico to possess it, would infer that someone is trying to implicate Oswald in illegality if this person is not Oswald.
Yeah, it's a little sketchy. And, possibly trying to connect him to, Castro
Yep.
and Russia.
That he's the
with all of
card-carrying
his
communist, as they would say.
right, with all his pro Castro leanings and support, and former defection to the Soviet Union. It's not a stretch,
Well, and
to paint him as a communist.
yeah, and another problem with this person producing that card is that in all other cases, Duran told officials the Communist Party in the U.S. would set up appointments so they wouldn't need those cards and violate the law.
Yeah, there's a little minor detail overlooked. I'm a card-carrying communist.
Exactly, and I'm not going to use the procedures that all the other communists do.
Well, I mean, it's likely Oswald wouldn't know the correct procedures since he's pretty much hanging out to dry on his own down there, seemingly. Maybe being told what to do, but maybe not being told everything the correct way.
Yeah, or it's once, I mean, I just think it no matter what, it plays into that this is, to produce that card is to implicate yourself. So if it was him, the only reason to do that would be to implicate yourself. And why would he do that? So it infers that he was given the card, he acquired the card, or as we go more into it, it's not him. It's somebody else using the card to try to implicate him.
Right.
So seemingly this person was aware of past information on Oswald, but the card deviates from Oswald, and this implication begins to create possible suspicions. So it's not just this person's actions or documents that were different, but also the appearance of this person widely varies from Oswald. The real Oswald is 5'9" without shoes. So with shoes or boots, he would have been about 5'11", which he's recorded as in some statements.
Right.
So Oswald weighed at least 135 pounds. In some statements, I believe it was 140. He had thinning dark hair, and he was 24 years old. The person described by Sylvia Duran in the Cuban consulate is, quote, 5'6", had sparse blonde hair, weighing 125 pounds. Consul Azque supports that this person is blonde. His height was between 5'6" and 5'7". He was between 35 to 37 years old. His cheeks were sunken, and he had a cold look in his eyes. That doesn't sound like the same person.
No, not at all.
So we have two witnesses, two official witnesses, two of the people that the story the officials offer is built upon. States a blonde-haired man of slight frame, 3 inches shorter than Oswald, and weighing at least 10 pounds less, came to the embassy. So, subsequent to official questioning, Azque states that he would have never identified the person as being Oswald. But that doesn't happen until the HSCA, which is, a decade after, or more, decade after the Warren Commission. Sylvia Duran also, quote, adamantly denied the person calling themselves Oswald ever visited the Cuban consulate September 28, 1963, which we shall learn is also another part of the story. So not only do we have them denying that the person matches Oswald and acts outside the behavior of Oswald and produces a card Oswald didn't have, but then Duran will say that what we're going to hear the next day didn't happen. Oswald never came to the embassy that day.
Let me ask you a question real quick, because I know it's going to come up. How do we explain the picture of Oswald on the Cuban visa application?
Well, I don't think that we have a definitive explanation for any of the elements that they offer, but I would say, one, there's no chain of evidence. We do not know how that picture got there. We do not know who gave it to Duran, and we don't know whether it was attached before or after officials presented it to the commission. Everything that came from there went through the CIA and the FBI.
I saw on the Ed forum where David Josephs posted, I guess it was first in my buddy ST's, our buddy ST's magazine Garrison, that researcher of note, Larry Rivera. That's a joke, by the way, people. Uh, posted, I guess, an excerpt from the magazine from an article by Rivera about the Cuban consulate visa and how there were supposedly two different ones. And one has a staple through the picture, one doesn't. One has an official stamp, one doesn't. Um, and it appears to me that they're not even the same visa number written on there.
Yeah, well, that's the problem too. Is that okay? So beyond the problematic chain of evidence, then you add in translations had to occur. So we're looking at copies that were translated in some cases. We're looking at copies that went through the hands of multiple people, some with different motivations to change some of this stuff. So I'm not saying that can't be 100% legitimate. It could be. Lee Harvey Oswald could have walked in on the 27th and handed that to her. But that doesn't prove the rest of the story.
That because the story goes, he walks in, can't understand Spanish. So she has, and he screws up the first application. So she has to help him do the second application.
Yeah.
So what I proposed was, okay, well, maybe, the first one was a mistake, was the mistake. But they dropped it in his file, the marked Oswald file, quote unquote, and anything that was attributed to Oswald in quotes was dropped in an embassy file and subsequently, made its way out of there many years later during the HSCA. But again, like you said, no chain of evidence for any of this. So
yeah. And to me, what you just proposed sounds reasonable. There's no reason to doubt that whatever they were told was from, as you said, quote unquote, Oswald, went into the file. That's what happened with the CIA in his 201 file.
Right.
That's what happened with, I'm sorry, they didn't originally, have one when they should have created one. But yeah, eventually, that's why we've been digging through so much for so many years, is because they dumped everything into his 201 files. So I don't see why the Cubans wouldn't have done similar things. Of course, anybody that is related to one subject, you put into the same file. Now, the question is did Oswald go in, make his mistakes, and leave? And then did someone else come in and then do the impersonation?
Right.
See, people think, well, Duran, of course, would. No, why would she remember him? He's an average person of average height and weight. She isn't some remarkable person who can just pull the faces and names. Dozens of people went through the consulates and the embassies. It wasn't just like one person went in there and she spent hours looking at Oswald. It was supposedly, according to some versions, 15 minutes. These were quick visits. He wasn't hanging out and getting to know people.
Well, supposedly she was smitten with him and he banged her down. No.
Well, which is a lie too. As we'll come to learn later, that was actually the CIA trying to undermine her.
Right.
When she started to not give them information they didn't want.
Right.
So, which leads to the twist party and all that other stuff. But
that's what we call a old-fashioned smear campaign, people.
Exactly. It was, the original, the CIA was perfecting slut shaming quite a bit longer.
Yeah.
Yet it wasn't. We have the documents that are a problem. We have the behavior that's a problem. We have the appearance that's a problem, and then we can move on to. So the denial is not the extent of the agency's efforts. You see, as we just discussed with Duran. So after Duran adamantly denies, the CIA and the FBI then largely suppress evidence and then state contending testimony from Duran or Azquay is ascribed to differences in our mistakes, lies, and conspiracy theories. So their own witnesses that they're going to try to later use to build their story, at the same time they're saying one of them's a liar, Duran,
right,
and that the other must have been mistaken. Not very consistent. No. If you're going to use portions of their statements to build your story, then you should also include the portions that blow up your story.
Let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
Let me interject because I think I know the answer, but I always like to get the facts straight. Do you know if Oswald ever, I mean, because I know he allegedly told Marina that he had went to Mexico. Okay, is I mean, do you know if he ever admitted going to Mexico or saying that he went to Mexico um, to anybody else ever?
No, no, I've never seen. It's possible, but I've never seen any evidence to show that he talked about going to Mexico to other people.
Because you think that would have been somewhat of a big deal, and it always perplexed me. Okay, well, this guy hadn't been working for many, many months leading up to his supposed trip to Mexico. Okay, he'd been on his little Fair Play for Cuba campaign, been arrested, been doing all this stuff, but he's not working. He doesn't have a job per se, and his family has left him, went to Texas. He's on his own. He's doing his own thing, and the trip from New Orleans subsequently to Mexico City is over 1,000 miles away. I mean,
Yeah, and he doesn't speak the language, and he can't
yeah,
read.
and it has to cost him money for the bus fare, to eat, for hotels. Uh, you know, eh, I just don't know how he would have had any money whatsoever by the time he supposedly went to Mexico to even afford to do this trip. It
Well,
just doesn't make any sense.
I think what evidence that officials have that is at least less questionable than all of this is that he feasibly crossed the border. And to me, the strongest evidence they have is not even that, not the border crossing, because some of that's challenged, but the Hotel Commercio where he stayed is
Right.
leads me to believe that he went to Mexico. Now, where he went in Mexico, that's all up for debate because we also have the story of him encountering the students on the college campus. And to me,
Right.
that seems a lot more probable than this shuttling back and forth through the communist embassies to implicate himself.
Yeah, I just don't understand the whole. I mean, because there's nothing like you think he would have written to the Russian embassy here in the United States and said, okay, this is my plan. Since we can't do this through America, I'm going to Mexico to try to get back to Russia via Cuba. Blah 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 blah
Or
blah
why didn't
blah.
he use his old path?
Right.
Why didn't he go via Canada and then go to, Norway or Sweden and
Or
go
go
into Russia
visit
that way?
the Cuban
Or
embassy in
Finland. Yeah.
Washington.
Yeah.
Or I mean, it would have been a shorter trip. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mexico,
There were
because
much more
Mexico
direct.
City was a very long way away from New Orleans, and
Yeah.
it still is.
But you can't say that he wanted to get to Cuba
Right.
if he didn't go to Mexico City.
Correct. Because, I guess the ban started back then where you couldn't fly directly to Cuba from the United States.
Yeah.
Was that the reason?
Well, once again, why not just go to Canada? Go
Yeah.
from Canada to Cuba.
Yeah.
So much easier. And then you don't have the Mexican officials that are going to inform the American officials.
Right. This is true. I guess the intelligence assets didn't tell him that. I guess.
Nice. No, just do it, Lee. It'll be fine.
Yeah, you're good. Just go make yourself
Here,
memorable,
make
asshole.
sure to show them this card.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But yeah, so I think that there is evidence. But see, the funny thing is and the reason why I think that the evidence at the Commercio is worthwhile is because at the Commercio, the waitress says that he can't even speak enough Spanish to order off the menu. He has to point at pictures.
Yeah, I mean that, and honestly, it does look like his signature in the book
So
there.
so him doing those, the things that don't implicate him, I don't really argue with because there's some evidence for them. It's when they try, as we'll get into more of it, when they really try to whip out what I would call dramatic fiction.
Oh,
because
like
it's
going to a
so overblown.
bullfight, dreaming of Judy the whole time?
Nice, yeah. Similar to modern dramatic fiction,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Yes, yes. Pray continue.
So, um, yeah. So the agency then attempts to discredit Duran multiple times by creating rumors that she and Oswald were lovers, and then later would verify the CIA's Mexico City station had interest in recruiting Duran, possibly using a blonde-haired, blue-eyed American to do so. Which I think is interesting that a blonde-haired, blue-eyed American, or calling themselves an American, showed up at the consulate.
Right.
um,
Although they could have picked a better looking one than some 37-year-old with sunken, hollowed cheeks
yeah.
and a bad stare.
So following these events, interest was overtaken by her troubling statements, and it led officials in the Warren. So a really interesting point is the Warren Commission never heard any of this. They were given the parse statements of the FBI and the CIA. They never got to hear that Duran and Asquith contended what they were saying. That all doesn't come till the HSCA.
Right. Of course.
So, so over a decade later, the HSCA looks at the statements. Duran gets on the record, but unfortunately, by then the damage had been done to her reputation, and some of the public have echoed these claims of Oswald being her lover to the detriment of the facts up until current times. There's still people saying it, and there is no evidence for it. Like one of the things they try to link her to is the supposed twist party. The problem with that is one, when Duran and her husband were arrested, they were at a party. So I have a feeling that might have influenced it a bit. Then DePaz and all the people who try to purport that story, there's no date in the original version. There's no times. There's no people that back it up. It's a fabrication.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, as in love with Judy as Oswald was, there's no way he would have cheated on her.
Nice. Be careful. Some people
Oh.
might hear.
I'm sorry. I thought that was part of the official record.
Nice, Judy. But
I got to get him in when I can, Carmine.
Hey, I can appreciate it. So, in my opinion, and I've had some controversy with some people over this, but one possible candidate for this unidentified person calling themselves Oswald at the Cuban consulate that matches much of the official description is a slight blonde-haired man seeking to recruit Americans in this period who worked for the KGB. Soviet Embassy Third Secretary Nikolai Leonov is 5'5", weighs 125 pounds, has blonde hair sometimes worn in a crew cut, blue eyes, and is 35 years old. The CIA's Mexico City chronology offers a reporter in one instance seeking to interview embassy officials is overheard interacting with Leonov, and during the call, Leonov makes a joke in, quote, perfect English. This ability to speak almost with native proficiency would allow him, unlike others at the Soviet embassy, to speak like an American. The potential reasoning for Leonov to impersonate Oswald might relate to a known defector attempting to re-enter the Soviet Union. Soviet intelligence would be aware of Oswald and Marina's prior communicated intentions about possibly returning to Russia. Since he possessed a wide net of informants and reporters, it is possible Leonov had knowledge of Oswald soon after he began traveling around Mexico City and making phone calls. Leonov is not the definitive answer to the identity of this person, but I offer him as a candidate that matches large portions of the description and is involved in these matters directly.
Sounds like a good candidate to me.
Yeah. Now, like I've told people who don't think it's Leonov, it could be somebody else that looks very similar to him. But right now, he's the one who I have evidence and is very similar. He's a pretty close match for whomever this person was.
Now, do you think that the pictures that surfaced during the HSCA match Leonov?
Well, here's the problem. There are actually pictures that we can pull from the photos that survived of Leonov coming out of the Soviet embassy, but none from the Cuban embassy. So he was in the area. He did interact on the phone at least once in the period, but we don't know for sure if it was him at the time on the day that went in. But yeah, it's wholly within the realm of possibility. He
Well,
knew where.
the camera wasn't working that day, Carmine.
Well,
So
which it's funny when you say that because it's like, sure, okay, maybe one camera wasn't working, but you had multiple
right,
cameras.
right, right.
And then let's say all of them were broken, which is, I guess, what we're supposed to believe. You had a mobile unit truck, and it didn't get it either.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is, this would have been perfect, to set all this stuff up in advance, to have Oswald have these so-called leanings, right? But then the majority of the Warren Commission's objectives was to make sure that we say it was just one lone nut and that he had no communist ties whatsoever, and they wanted nothing to do with any of that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They didn't want to blame it on anybody else, but maybe the intelligence offices did.
Oh,
Uh,
oh, certainly. CIA and the military wanted their war. They wanted a war with Cuba and Russia.
right, and the FBI and Johnson and everybody else wanted a neat little bow and for this to go away as quickly as possible.
Because their fingerprints were they had been monitoring him for so long.
Yeah,
It's in a way it's because we've debated with certain people. I think, as we've said before, I think it was a small compartmentalized group, 5 to 10 people at most, and I think that they were in positions, or they had the knowledge that they didn't have to cover it up. They just had to blow up Oswald. If they blew up Oswald, everybody who was watching him gets connected. Anything he's involved in is now poison. So they have to cover it up.
and who was supposed to be watching him? The FBI.
Yeah.
And who was watching him? The FBI.
And the CIA.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's
who
quite
knows, the
obvious.
NSA and military intelligence.
I mean, anybody that came back with a Russian wife at that time who was a former Marine
Defector.
defector is going to be watched.
Yep.
And if they're not watching him, they're watching Marina.
Yeah.
They're opening their mail. They know where they're living. They know where they're working. And,
Well,
we pretty much have proof of that at this point.
yeah. And as you know from, show we did before in the past, I was able to prove that that Jacques Richardson, who Joan Mellon had found under the pseudonym Cassison, was looking into using Oswald when he was in Russia. And then they decided, well, they say they decided not to, but they always denied that they had ever even looked at him. They'd never consider him. Well, that's a lie. And then later on, the FBI is looking at using Morena to spot other Russian defectors.
Right, because they're hanging around all these white Russians, in Texas. And I mean, I printed off a timeline of Hosty, right, and the FBI and kind of what they were doing when it comes to the Oswalds. And they had talked to Oswald literally a week after he got back from Russia.
Yeah.
They sat down and pretty much debriefed him, talked to him,
Well,
and
yeah,
this is in 1962.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
summer.
the CIA roughly around the same time did the same
Right.
thing, and they always denied it. But 30 CIA employees, and it was actually a pro-commission documentary from PBS. I believe it was Who Was Lee Oswald? Who was Lee Harvey Oswald? And they go into that 30 employees from the CIA said he was debriefed, despite that the commission said he never was.
Right. They for sure would have talked to this guy upon his returning, especially since they paid for him to come back.
Yeah, they might have jailed him. That would have been more usual.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. He walks between the raindrops, as we'll see so for some reason this guy can do things nobody else can do and just stroll out.
Right. I don't get it. But I think the FBI really had egg on their face when they realized
Oh yeah.
who was getting the blame for this.
Yeah.
And that they would have been tasked to watch him, once he's back in the United States. because allegedly the CIA can't really perform any actions within.
Legally. But hey,
Right,
when has that ever gotten in the way?
right. But officially the FBI would have been tasked to watch and interview and pay attention to what this guy's doing. And you can see from the movements of Hosty, Debris, and a couple other ones that they were watching him. They went where he went. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. And they were watching DeMoranshil too. They're watching a lot of people.
right. And of course, the Shield's got ties to the CIA, and they were probably they weren't stupid. They knew that 9 times out of 10, if a foreigner goes over there and defects and marries a Russian woman relatively quickly, the chances of her actually being a spy sicked on him to keep an eye on him, is more than likely. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That was actually the concern of Richardson. The CIA officer was concerned. That's why they probably didn't use Oswald at the time.
Exactly, because Marina is right there.
Yeah. And they had seen cases like that. I think there's a dozen other cases.
Well, yeah.
Where...
I mean, how else can you explain Marina, meeting and having a relationship with Webster, Robert Webster, and then, meeting another defector at the, in her teens in a country as big as Russia? I mean, come on, it doesn't happen. The odds are against her.
Yeah. So
unless purposely
exactly. Yeah. Someone.
Said, all right, you go bed this guy, find out what he's doing, really. And maybe she did fall in love with him. Who knows?
Yeah. Or maybe, well, and you know what?
Or she's just doing what she's told.
Yeah. Well, or, I mean, it's highly improbable that all those things would have been coincidence. It's possible, but anything's possible. It doesn't mean it's probable.
Right. And I mean, it wouldn't take too much to entice her to say, okay, well, if you marry this guy, you eventually get to go to America and have a great life, have a washing machine, have many babies.
Well, and maybe, it didn't, nice. Maybe it didn't even, you get the Yankee blue gene, but,
you get to wear makeup, wear high heels, dresses.
No
get
more
your teeth fixed.
No more having to report when you want more food.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it could have even been as simple as they just, pushed her via a relative.
Yeah.
To go meet this guy. That there's this poor guy they saw at the hospital. She should go try to cheer him up.
Yeah.
It's just that easy. They could be just that subtle. So yeah, it's certainly worth noting that he had fingerprints all over him from Mattel, and that to me is one of the instead of the nefarious big plot, it's as who was it? I can't remember who said. I think it was our friend Steve Rowe. He said CYA mode. That's what happened.
Exactly.
The government wanted to cover their ass. That's what they needed to do.
Exactly.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Even though Steve thinks that Oswald pulled the trigger, and even if he did,
that doesn't mean he was alone.
Doesn't mean that he's alone, but it still means that the FBI had to cover their ass.
Exactly.
And the intelligence agency had to cover their connections to this guy. It was they're either hiding their fingerprints or their connections, one or the other.
Well, and they had other illegal things going on. Like one of the big contentions, and then I'll jump back on. I know, but I think this is good for context. Like one of the, like you were saying about with the commission covering up, the same thing happened during the Garrison investigation. Garrison had fallen over like a dozen different CIA operations in New Orleans. He was literally unraveling their network.
Right.
So they had to stop him. And it's not because the CIA is behind JFK's murder. It's because he was going to unravel their spy network in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And they had lied. They lied. I'm not, I just think that we can't assume those lies mean they killed him.
No. It just means that they didn't want the public to find out what they had been up to.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that abrogates them of all responsibility. It doesn't mean that there couldn't have been a rogue member or a small cell, that had some sort of responsibility. But right. The CIA overall, no. It's most of the CIA had no idea the assassination plots were going on. Targeting Castro and other world leaders.
Right. And I mean, to target the president of the United States would not have been an official assassination plot. Anyway.
No, you don't send that memo out.
No.
You don't shop that around the office to see what people think.
Hey, this guy's going to shut us down. We need to kill him first.
What do you guys think about taking out the executive, huh? Yeah.
I don't think, just on principle, many people would have been behind it. Maybe for personal reasons, maybe, but.
And that would have been really limited, the amount of people, that, even for personal reasons, I think.
Right. So therefore, they would have went through back channels, more, like you said, more lower level type stuff that couldn't be too closely associated with the CIA. At least that's what I would think.
Yeah. Well,
I would think they would use their own for this thing,
Yeah, and it makes even more sense that if it were going to be someone in an official organization, whether it's CIA, NSA, no matter what, they wouldn't use the group to do it. In fact, you see in the Guide to Assassination, in the study of assassination that the CIA put out in the 50s, they actually recommend that you use foreign services to get it done. So, if they were
or some hapless idiot who has the perfect bona fides to look guilty as shit.
Yeah, and it goes through how to do that as well, how to set someone up and how to make sure that all ties are severed with the organization so that this one guy holds the bag at the end.
Yep. Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah. So, okay. So jumping back in, another source that the official account relied upon for the 27th was restated in a media report based on a book of consul official and KGB colonel Oleg Nechiporenko.
Oh,
it claimed in the 1990s that Oswald arrived at the Soviet embassy on September 27th and was greeted by consular official Valery Kostakov in his cover role. Kostakov, another famous member of the KGB, was officially reported to have been in Department 13, the sabotage group responsible for political assassinations. Now, the CIA and the FBI trumpeted this everywhere. It was in the newspaper. Everybody was talking about it. This was the big deal.
Awfully convenient.
Yeah, well, and what they didn't talk a lot about was how short these visits were. 20 minutes at the most. So I don't know what sort of plan was going to get done. Another problem is that Kostakov didn't speak good English at the time. He did later on, but in 1963 he spoke broken English, and we have recordings of him on the phone doing that. So he wouldn't have been the point man.
Also, I wouldn't think, Carmine, that a good idea, I mean, they had to know that they were being watched by the Americans. Because they were probably watching the Americans watch them.
Well,
so
yeah, a very salient point, and another problem is that in some of the research I did earlier this year, I was able to prove Kostakov showing that his system was he used coded language on the phones. He never spoke openly with someone. And then when he did meet someone, he met them outside the embassy because he didn't want to blow up their diplomatic compound.
Yes. I was just getting ready to say, what Johnny Genius is going to meet and make plans for a political assassination at their place of business.
Yeah. Is going to have the assassin come before all the cameras of opposing intelligence and just stroll in. And even though supposedly that's what they say happened, they never got a picture.
No. And or I guess their cameras are broken too.
Exactly. So we are to believe now that the cameras on the Cuban embassy are broken that day, and then the cameras on the Soviet embassy are broken too.
Yeah, and what he's attributed to doing while he's there is just.
We'll get into it in the next day.
Yeah.
So this first supposed visit on the 27th to the Soviet embassy, he gets handed off to Nechiporenko from Kostakov, and then, so the book further claims Kostakov was late for a lunch meeting. He pawns him off to Nechiporenko, and at the end of the contact, Oswald is sent away to get more information. He leaves. Kostakov is quoted as supporting that Oswald was repeating himself and annoyed in the media account. But the next day, things quickly venture into the realm of improbable fiction. So, September 28th, the next day, a Saturday. U.S. officials state that Lee Harvey Oswald again ventured to the Soviet embassy during the morning of Saturday, September 28th, and would encounter a consular official that informed him of needing more information from the Cuban consulate for a visa application. One prior source of these claims is a news report by the Excelsior newspaper with an unnamed person at the Soviet embassy that states presents such details following the death of President Kennedy in November. Interestingly, this same outlet also would carry a story attempting to link Oswald to Sylvia Duran and Azcue in a Cuban assassination plot. That was afterwards. But unlike the consulate episodes, that was retracted. So once again, so far we have KGB accounts, internal CIA sources that are trying to discredit Duran, and now a newspaper that around the same time had to retract one of its stories is another source that we're relying on.
Nice.
Okay. So, officials then press ahead and state that Oswald supposedly is now making these visits back and forth a second day in a row. Consular official Nechiporenko would describe Oswald the following day as a man on the edge of breakdown. According to the KGB colonel, Lee Oswald returned to the Soviet embassy and KGB agents were getting ready for a soccer game against the opposing GRU military intelligence team. Which I think is, I mentioned this when I talked about it with Larry Hancock and Chuck. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
that all the evil Russian agents were getting ready for a intramural soccer game.
Yeah.
When
driving
we're not,
their German VW bugs around.
When we're not out killing people, we like to play a little soccer.
Yes.
So Kostakov,
a nice friendly game of soccer.
Nice. Yeah, you wonder if anybody got clipped for losing a soccer game.
That would have been the appropriate ending. Since they're all killers and assassins, I mean, why not?
So Kostakov, according to the account, brings a nervous Oswald to Second Secretary Pavel Yatskov's office. The media source incorrectly states that Kostakov spoke excellent English, but as I'd already mentioned, he spoke rudimentary poor English in '63, according to official files. And Nechiporenko states Kostakov that day would join Oswald in the office with the consul secretary, which is notable. Yatskov is noted to speak decent English, but not fluent. Kostakov is noted to speak broken English. So how are they having a conversation? Because if you go off of what they're saying, they say the person on the phone from the Cuban consulate the day before was Oswald, even though they spoke broken Russian, which Oswald speaks fluent Russian. So how is a person, according to them, with broken Russian and broken English having a conversation?
Yeah, and you don't know how much either side is even understanding, let alone speaking.
Or mistranslating.
Right.
Anyway, that's supposedly where the nefarious plan happens.
That's what we call epic clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, that Bob Baer thing where they tried to turn this into some sort of a nefarious... It's not the real well-oiled plan that show presented.
No. Obviously not. If what they say actually went down in that office, they probably would have shot Oswald on the spot.
Well, we're about to get into that, yes. So he's in the office with, according to the story anyway, according to Nechiporenko, he's in the office with Yatskov and Kostakov. And then Kostakov supposedly offers that Oswald, quote, continually expressed concern for his life and was, quote, extremely agitated and clearly nervous, especially when he mentioned the FBI.
Of course, because, the FBI is after him. They won't leave him alone.
Well, and I think him being annoyed by the FBI is one thing. What they say happens after that is another. So that's why it's possible he could have made a visit. I
wonder why he's annoyed by the FBI, because they're fucking watching him constantly.
Yeah,
And
they're interviewing Morena. So that's the thing, is that in every untrue story there are some grains of truth.
Right, because they're
So sure,
probably trying to visit his house, trying to talk to him, or try to talk to Marina, or going to where he works and getting him fired. And, because, hey, we're with the FBI. We're asking about Lee Oswald, but nobody wants that kind of trouble. So see you later, buddy.
yeah, and for a story to be effective, if you're trying to smear someone, you have to have some truth in it. It can't just be all fabrication. It has to be
Exactly.
fabrication tailored to using that truth part to convince you.
Right.
Uh,
Like the alleged note he dropped off at the FBI office before the assassination. Probably leave us the hell alone, dude.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And that makes a lot more sense than the version that said he was going to blow the FBI office up.
Right.
Once again, we're seeing dramatic license.
Yeah.
So he's back there with the two KGB agents, and so this is where it really starts to become like a storybook. The KGB version presents that Oswald was overwrought when they denied him a visa by explaining he must go to Washington to acquire one, and he supposedly declared, quote, "This won't do for me. This is not the case. For me, it's all going to end in tragedy."
So melodramatic.
Yeah, it sounds like a high school play.
Ugh. I'm sure Judy knows what book that's quoted from.
So there are certainly reasons to assume Oswald was tired of FBI interference, but at this point,
Maybe something Comrade Asimov may have written back in the 50s.
yeah. So it's I mean, this is where it really starts to turn. So he makes this dramatic announcement, and then Nechiporenko, who isn't present, and Kostakov states, according to Nechiporenko, who isn't even there, that Oswald produced a revolver and put it on the table while stating, "See, this is what I must now carry to protect my life." So Oswald being armed for a diplomatic request.
Brandishing a weapon
Yes.
in the office.
Yeah, but not later, I think, present some questions. For instance, if Oswald always carried a pistol, why did he not do so after this meeting, for instance, on November 22nd?
Why didn't he do it in the Cuban consulate when demanding a visa?
Yeah.
No, bitch. You're going to put my picture on the visa and I'm going to Cuba.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day.
I mean, if he's going to, so he doesn't, if he's always carrying this pistol and he's being so dramatic about how important it is to him, why doesn't he have it later when he really needs it?
Exactly. And why, I'm sorry, but he had a holster for the pistol, correct?
Yeah, according to the story, he puts it in his pants.
I'm sorry, is that a pistol in your pocket or you just happen to shoot it?
Nice. But yeah. So they're saying he's just carrying a loose pistol around in his pants, gangster style.
Right, shoot his dick off.
Well, they had shot himself in the leg prior, so anything's in the realm of possibility. I wonder. So another question is, I wonder how Oswald possibly could have produced a weapon on foreign diplomatic ground in a style easily perceived as a threat before two KGB members and nothing supposedly happened.
Right. Well, allegedly they took the pistol, but then gave it back to him. Right.
Yeah. He's
Well,
not arrested. Yeah, exactly. He's not arrested. I think Larry said that doesn't even happen at Walmart.
Yeah.
So Oswald is not arrested. He's not questioned. He's not jailed. The gun isn't
not reported.
Yeah. He's not reported to Mexican authorities, which is the standard thing to do if you want to protect yourself from being any blowback from this.
Or you think you would call the U.S. Embassy and be like, "Hey, we got one of your nut jobs over here pulling a gun out in our freaking office.
Yeah, come get him.
Come get him."
Yeah, that's standard procedure. That's what will happen.
Yeah.
So, but none of it happens. And then, according to the KGB, they just calm him down. The weapon is not held for evidence. It's not turned over to Mexican officials, as the law would state. But according to Nechiporenko's account, as Rob said, Pavel Yatskov takes the gun, empties the cartridges, puts the bullets in the drawer during the conversation, and then after it's done, in spite of everything that happened, he gives the gun and the bullets back.
Yeah. And let me guess the ending to this story, Carmine.
Huh.
A short 2 months later, when they see the news on TV, they say that was the man that visited our office.
And boy, is he crazy. As we'll get into, yeah, and the
Yes.
motivations of why they might say that.
Right.
So, yeah, so, however, one significant problem, which is, another incongruent part of this mess that officials tried to put together as a story, is Nechepurenko's claims when they're compared to an earlier transcript of an intercepted call from Yatskov at the time. In that account, something is missing. During the earlier calls, Yatskov does agree with Kostakov and with Nechepurenko that Oswald's nervous and says he has trembling hands and barged into his office, but there's no mention of a revolver or bullets. The most important part of the story was likely added later by Nechepurenko or Kostakov before the American press grabbed a hold of it.
Because probably, and I'm just guessing here, this is just my assumption, that they probably would have been instructed to do so to make it seem like this crazy American could have done this on his own.
Hmm?
You
They
know,
didn't
like,
want any. Same with the U.S. with the officials that weren't directly connected to anything in the assassination. They did not want this on them.
correct.
And you know what? I think one of the we can get into some more of the motivations too later, but I think that one of the biggest motivations is what is the easiest way to dispose of this? They had succeeded. Number one, they didn't have foreknowledge. So unless you believe that the communists did it, which I don't, and I don't think there's much substantial evidence for that belief, but unless you believe that, they don't know what Oswald's going to. They don't know that Oswald's going to be implicated or anything he's going to do in the future.
Right.
So all they know is he's trying to get in, deflect him. Boom, it's successful. They deflect him. He is painted as a crazy person and sent home. But then he's the official suspect. Uh-oh. Now what? Well, now we give the Americans whatever the hell they want.
Exactly.
Crazy? He's crazy. Liar? He's a liar. Gun? Sure, he's got a gun. Anything else?
Right. Exactly.
So I think that is one of the probable, explanations for why the KGB did what they did.
Yeah. Why the asshole waited until the 90s to write a book and put this shit in it, I don't know.
Well, what was going to come back on him? KGB didn't exist then.
Well, that's true.
It was safe. So, so another thing is similar to somebody, the person that I mentioned earlier as a possible candidate for impersonating him was how I originally got drawn into looking at some of this stuff. And similar to Nechepurenko and Kostakov, there's another KGB officer who lent future but incongruent support to the story that we've discussed. And that's Third Secretary of the Embassy, Nikolai Leonov. Leonov, as prior reported, would later claim, contrary to Nechepurenko, the gun episode, who he also claimed to be a part of. So now we've got another person. So now we've got Leonov, Nechepurenko, Kostakov, and Yatskov all there, according to them.
Right.
But Leonov says it didn't happen on Saturday the 28th. It happened on Sunday the 29th.
Huh.
So now we don't even have a date that everybody agrees on.
I love it because this American visitor was so important that everybody in the embassy, Russian embassy, had to meet with him.
And what's funny is that Leonov and Kostakov for sure. I don't know about Nechepurenko or Yatskov. They might have, but I know the two of them were soccer fanatics and volleyball fanatics, so they were playing in the game.
Right.
So wins the game. Well, I know that Leonov got pulled out of a volleyball game, which kind of goes along with some of the story. But what's going on here? We don't have a congruent timeline. We don't have substantial evidence, and officials have just they've cherry picked parts of bad stories and tried to mold them into some sort of a suitable narrative.
I would agree.
So we've got. So, and I don't think, it's possible, but I would agree with, some of the work that's already been done, like the work by Bill Simpich, that Leonov is either it's a mistranslation, it's memory failure, or it's disinformation. It's to muddy the waters even more. And, or maybe he just wanted to get some attention at the time, make a little money, like Nechepurenko had done before him.
Very good point. Very good point.
Yeah. So, so anything's possible after, after you throw Leonov on top of all the other problems.
Yeah.
The gun not appearing, that kills me. That
Yeah.
kills me that they didn't consider that.
Yeah, that's kind of an important part of the story if you're retelling it. Yeah,
Yeah. And then, so perhaps the most substantive part of Leonov is that he also supports that there's no consistent account of that day based on existing statements. But the account is similar in some respects to Nechepurenko and Kostakov's version, but has its own embellishments. So, October 1st, the CIA intercepts a call to the Soviet embassy with consular guard Ivan Obyedkov, who spoke with a person identifying themselves as Lee Oswald. This person claimed to have visited the Soviet embassy on Saturday and the Cuban embassy as well. This call was used to help join the prior information into a single account, which Oswald is thereby implicated in the actions of at least one person who does not physically match his appearance, behavior, and he possesses a gun that's not taken into evidence, and the person on different calls speaks in broken Russian, not fluent Russian that Oswald spoke. And while Oswald could not write or read in Russian with great proficiency, even native Russian speakers offered he was fluent in the language. But if a KGB official was to impersonate him, they likely were operating on older information, and they were unaware of such minor details. Another likely overlooked detail is that some calls officials linked to Oswald were in Spanish, a language that Nikolai Leonov spoke, but Oswald did not. Needless to say, the varying portions of these accounts used by officials cannot prove much beyond nearly every witness opposes some part of another's testimony, and none of it proves Oswald made all the appearances, and he may have never went to the Cuban consulate.
It's a very good point. I mean, when you think about it in the context of, okay, Oswald spoke no Spanish whatsoever. Why in the hell would he have went to Mexico City to try to get all this stuff done, knowing that there would have been a big language barrier?
Yeah, that he couldn't even move around the city, that he couldn't even speak to order food. And to me, it's the reason why I say there's the potential that he did go to one of the compounds, being the Soviet compound, is because he actually spoke the language.
Right.
That's a lot more likely. You wouldn't want to, why would you compound your problems? And like we said about it makes no sense. If he's already got a successful path to Russia, why is he creating a new path? If he wants to go to Cuba, go to Canada and go directly. Why would you go to Mexico City? If that's why he's there.
And where did he get the money for a plane ticket to Cuba, back to Russia?
Exactly. It's much more likely if you're trying, if we get into the mind of a reasonable official, should one have existed in this, at this portion of the investigation anyway, you would think that they would assume, he would use the path of least resistance that he already had, the cheapest way, because he had been able to do it before when he didn't have a lot of money, instead of this journey to a country he wasn't familiar with, on the chance that he might convince. Yeah, you'd go. It's kind of like when we talked about one of the weird things that Nagel did when he went, instead of going to get money from the U.S. government in America, he went to another country and requested it at an embassy. That makes no sense. What are you doing? So Oswald, it doesn't make any sense either that he would have gone there to try to do that. He could have gone.
A hope and a prayer that somebody in the Cuban embassy speaks English in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't assured.
No.
But somebody who knows, somebody who's informed, that works at the Soviet embassy might be a lot more comfortable in getting that done.
Right. Because, of course, they worked with the Cuban embassy, being they're communists. And
yeah, they've at least contacted. That's another interesting thing, too, about Leonov, is that he lived above the embassy in an apartment above the Soviet embassy.
They were controlling who visits Cuba, basically.
Leonov was always there at the Soviet embassy. So he, because people are like, well, how did Duran not know him? One, Duran's just a minor employee. She isn't introduced to all the leaders at the other embassy. And at the time, Leonov wasn't, he was doing covert operations. It's not like he was walking around introducing himself to everybody.
Right.
And Asquith was new. He had only been there, I believe, 6 months at the time. So once again, it's not like there was lots of crossover time. But whether it was Leonov or whomever, it could have been anybody in the Soviet embassy. It just takes, one unknown or miscellaneous source. You use them to impersonate, and that's it. It's done. He's been painted. And, with Duran, too, people have to understand, she gave the statements. When they didn't like the statements, she was arrested. Now, some people say she was tortured. I'm willing to say that at least she was roughed up, because that's even what she said. So she was probably beaten up a little, at the very least. And that, and being told that you're going to be arrested and jailed, will get you to be quiet.
Well, yeah.
And then later on, the problem is that there are more statements that are congruent, that oppose the official narrative, than there are that support it. Because what we can prove is Asquith and Duran were adamant it wasn't him. It didn't match him. It didn't look like him, not his behavior.
Right.
Now, people will then say, as you said, well, there's the picture, and Duran says, yes, I got the picture. Sure. Oswald could have gone in on the 27th, could have turned in and screwed up an application and left and went to the Soviet embassy, and then the next day just went to the Soviet embassy. But somebody else went there to the Cuban embassy that wasn't him and said they were. And then we have people on the phone saying they're him speaking in languages he can't speak. And then officials are trying to make this amalgam of all of it, trying to say it's all him.
Right.
And that's not what happened. Whether you want to believe you or not, somebody went there and said they were him. That doesn't match. And this has been pushed by not just what really bothers me is that you show me any other instance when the CIA will accept without critical checking what the KGB tells them.
Right.
They took 4 KGB officers' word, largely. That's what this is based on. And not even statements that line up.
Right. The question is, why did they do this at that time?
I really think, like we said before, I think that they needed this to go away. They needed him to be crazy.
Yeah.
And they needed it to go away. And because if people delved in, as we have over the years, as researchers and the public looked into it, what have we found? All sorts of holes, all sorts of unanswered questions, all sorts of paths just shut down because they were afraid that this was going to lead back to their investigations of him. And thus people were going to assume that they were connected.
Yeah, I can see a lot of this being done, retrograde.
Yeah. It was all just done, to retroactively fix everything.
Right. I mean, as soon as they had him in custody, that's when everybody went haywire, because then they realized who they had in custody, and the FBI was like, "Oh shit!" The CIA was like, "Oh shit,"
Yeah.
And the best thing that could have happened was Jack Ruby popping out of that crowd of reporters and popping him, and him not surviving.
Oh yeah, because if this would have went to court, it would have been a circus.
Or if he actually got to talk to a lawyer.
Yeah.
Or somebody, anybody.
Yeah. This would have been. I don't think that they. I don't think that, that most people, of course, the people who probably engineered making sure that happened with Jack Ruby knew, but officials, they were just they were floundering. They had this was unprecedented. So they had no idea. I mean, there were some people, of course, and that is in Hoover's style and in the style of the CIA. Just shut it all down, cut off all ties, knock everybody out. Anybody. I mean, you can look at some of the internal documents from the CIA, and you had the chief of JM Wave Station telling people that if they talked about this, they'd be fired. That this is to be quiet. Nobody talks about this.
Yeah, and you have the FBI jumping in real quick in Dallas after Oswald is arrested.
Yeah, and confiscating evidence.
And controlling the interrogations, basically. I don't think there was one interrogation that the FBI didn't sit in on or try to...
Even at the autopsy, they had 2 agents.
Steer, yeah. So, Oswald maybe wasn't asked the right questions in the interrogation. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, total. Well, you know what? And I think sure that there would have been some leading away, just because they didn't want local officials. Because if Oswald's like, yeah, all those times that you would come to my house and talk to my wife,
right.
I'm sure they didn't want to get, that probably happened, but I'm sure none of that made it into the notes.
Yeah. And I'm sure just them being there also put Oswald in a weird position to where he didn't want to say very much either, you know?
Well, yeah, because there was no matter basically, I think in Oswald, and this is speculation, but were I Oswald, you know that anything you say, they're going to try to use against you.
Right.
So I
You
think
can't
that's
just
why.
say, look, I've talked to you guys plenty of times, and I mean, who knows? I mean, there's rumors that, of course, he was an informant for the FBI. There's accusations being made that, oh, don't worry, the chief's protecting me, referring to Hoover, um, or somebody else with FBI ties or CIA ties.
The thing about Hoover that really interests me in regard to this is when the conversation that Hoover has that the later portion gets erased, but that next day when he's talking to Johnson and he said someone impersonated Oswald at the Cuban embassy.
Right.
That matches Duran, that matches Asquith, that matches the consistent parts of the story. I don't usually agree with J. Edgar Hoover, but he does get it right sometimes.
Yeah. It's just everything else before that.
and after.
Yeah, because that happened in Mexico. That didn't happen in the United States.
Yeah.
That's on the CIA's lap.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I think beyond the animus of, all the historical reasons the CIA and the FBI didn't like each other, but that's why he said the CIA lied to him. That's why he forever hated them. Because in one of the private memos, I can't remember exactly who it was to, but I believe it was to one of the assistant directors. But Hoover says that the CIA has forever been destroyed as the preeminent organization because of what happened in the assassination investigation, because of the information they took from the CIA and ran with it originally, like Alvarado. That's another part of this whole mess in Mexico City that's a myth. That there was a man that handed off money to Oswald as part of a Cuban plot, and that Duran was involved somehow. That's all nonsense. And the CIA ran. The first conspiracy theory about Mexico City was offered by the CIA.
Right.
It was Alvarado. So, if they were so desperate to create a myth and run with it, why wouldn't they do it again?
Yeah, and they've done it a million times in the past. So there you go.
Yeah. That's how you set up propaganda. That's how you implicate someone to be guilty when they're not.
Yep. Well, whoever did it is brilliant. And
well, yeah, after they did a good job with at least the presenting it to everybody and pushing it. But I'm telling you, when you look into the facts of the matter, it's not such a great story.
Well, no. I mean, but it's taken us this long to unpack it all.
Yeah, travel all of it.
The principals are dead, and everybody else. We're just now being able to unpack all this and try to get to the bottom of actually what the hell happened. So.
Well, and I think that the best that a decent summary I think that I can offer is, I suppose, a more accurate version, if we look at this, of what actually happened. What we can prove is that an intercepted call from the 27th at the Cuban consulate by someone calling themselves Oswald was connected to the KGB stories of the 27th and 28th. And then that was tied to a phone call made to the Soviet embassy that Obiedkov answered, Ivan Obiedkov, the guard, on October 1st. And then this call, the person speaks broken Russian again, identifies themselves as Oswald. They proceed to mention being present last Saturday at the embassy. That gets tied to the person named Kostin, who officials believe is Kostikov.
Right.
And then cobbled together the story. And they select just the portions that link Oswald to the communist intelligence groups.
And there you have it, folks.
And that's what I think happened. I mean, that's what substantial amounts of the evidence suggest happened.
Well, it sounds logical to me. I mean, this has all confused the hell out of me in the past, and when you look at it like that, it makes a hell of a lot more sense than everything else that we know, or think we know about what happened in Mexico City.
And then and then people run with it. It's
and then it turns into something else and something else and something else.
Yeah.
And then the waters are muddied all these years.
Yeah, we've got waves of CIA, ex-CIA people claiming things about it. And then we've got waves of ex-KGB people claiming things about it. And then we've got waves of myth makers claiming things about it. And then we all have to pick through it.
And hopefully we finally arrived at the truth of the matter.
At least portions, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever get everything hashed out, but I think that at least knocks out some of the bigger questions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get into your new book, Carmine, Human Time Bomb. Tell the folks a little bit about your new book.
Okay. Well, I decided to write the new book because of actually some of our conversations here and elsewhere that I've had with people about. It made me wonder the question: what is within humans that makes us want to kill other people? Not necessarily just we all have reasons.
Oh yeah.
And we all think about it,
we all think about it, but to actually do it is something else,
Exactly.
Entirely.
Yeah, you're crossing a line, and what I talk about in the book too is that even with violence, even when you're not murdering someone, just when you strike out at someone, you are changing your brain when you do that. You're changing your baseline about what is acceptable and not acceptable to you. And it's not always, a lot of people want to ascribe it to evil. It's not. It can be malicious when you do violence, but violence it's a defense mechanism, really. When you look at violence is a way of not only defending ourselves from environmental threats, other people and animals, but it's also a way of being able to use violence in productive, or I shouldn't say violence, I should say aggression in productive ways. Like, for instance, with sports or with...
or it could earn you power and respect in the eyes of certain people.
Exactly, yeah. That's where it's going to, status. That's another, like what you were just saying. Status is one of the big drivers. Status, fear, and disgust are what I talk about in the book as three of the primary drivers of violence and aggression when you look at them. Because fear, you can see that everywhere. People are afraid. Fear automatically gets aggressive responses. That's just the way humans are programmed, and that's the way we react to our environment. So when someone wants to upset you, or they want to get you to be upset at someone else, they'll often use fear to make you afraid about something or to make someone suspicious. And then the same with disgust, that plays into it too. You can look at disgust it goes all the way back to people. Think about people that you'll sit by or you won't. People that look dirty or they don't. There's a lot of different subtle things, cues that we don't even notice that drive our behavior.
Yeah, I was sitting in front of one of them the other night at my daughter's volleyball game.
Yeah.
I got up and moved.
Yeah.
Because I was disgusted.
Exactly. And we can look too. What's interesting is that there are varying levels. So there are people that, generally if someone is just totally, they haven't bathed in a week and
well, I felt like a human time bomb sitting in front of this guy.
Nice.
Because he was one of these big fat dudes, and I let my wife pick where we sat, and I told her she's banned from ever picking again. But this guy was so loud and boisterous and hacking up lungs, like I felt like I had like phlegm all over my back. He kept clearing his throat and coughing and just very loud and boisterous. I'm sitting there. The more I'm sitting there, the more pissed off I'm getting. The more I really wanted to turn around and say, "Really, motherfucker? Like, do you really have to do this right here, right now? Yeah.
Well, and what that is all for, and some people might be like, oh, well, that's not nice. You shouldn't get mad at people for, those things. But those things are programmed into us in some ways. And so it is natural Now, if you shouldn't have turned around and decked him.
Right.
But
I wanted to.
Yeah, well, exactly. But you resisted, which is what you're supposed to do as an
And I
adult.
didn't say anything. I just got up and moved.
And that's what you're supposed to do.
I
That
extracted
that was
myself from the situation.
that, and that was a reasonable, rational way to deal with the situation. But some people don't have that. They don't have that ability to rationally deal with it, and they might hit the guy or scream at the guy or say something. And the
Oh, yeah.
problem, yeah, and the problem is that's our natural inclination, and it isn't. While it might be offensive or upsetting to people, it's not wrong. It is a defense mechanism set up. In earlier times, as where that's annoying, and you were right. He could have been sick. What that essentially emerged from is your deep instinct that he's coughing all over the place. If this guy is sick, he's going to get everybody else sick, and that's disgusting. And you don't want that on you, and you don't want that on your wife, so you move. And you see people, but this goes all the way back to our childhood. On the playground, when kids are talking about cooties or someone having something wrong with them, that's what that is. It's the disgust mechanism.
Yeah, cover your mouth. Cover your mouth.
Yeah. And that's all it is. And it's all played upon these strategies that humans have developed over time to learn from. And there were, times in ancient history where we didn't even have a concept of why we were disgusted, and we made up stories like, when you look at old tales about vampires and zombies and the dead, all of that was because people were disgusted by the dead. The smell, all of that would set off their disgust mechanism. So they made up these monster stories to keep people away from the dead. Now, what they didn't understand was it wasn't that there were actually monsters. It was that we were disgusted and they were disease-ridden. But we couldn't conceive of that. So our body said, okay, monsters, let's do this.
Right.
Make up an excuse, stupid. Just stay away from them.
Yeah, you didn't know that you could get some weird disease from, a rotting corpse,
Yeah. Yeah, so we have biological instincts that play into some of our rational thoughts, and we don't always realize it. And sometimes, they can override our rational thoughts, and we become irrational. So that's
I was listening to a podcast. I'm still am because it's not all the way out yet. I think there's 9 episodes of it out, but it reminded me of your book when I'm listening to it, and it's called Monster DC Sniper. Okay. Now, you're familiar with the story of the DC snipers, correct?
Yeah. Wasn't it it was an older and a younger guy in the back of the car?
Right, exactly. Well, I actually lived through this because I
Oh,
live very close to DC, and my work, I was delivering things in the areas
oh,
that these
wow.
snipers were hitting, to some
Crazy.
of the very same places that the snipers killed people at. Okay.
Holy, wow.
Yeah. And I did it in a white box truck. So,
Oh, man. So, nice. It's like, I have the average description of a victim. Time to go deliver something.
now I never got pulled over, but a coworker, he was in DC and he got pulled over and questioned, because he was in a white box truck at the time. And I mean, it was very scary living here during that, because I mean, you had people at, just trying to get gas at the gas station, ducking and walking in to pay for their gas in like a zigzag pattern, or running, or you had gas stations hanging
Yeah.
up big giant tarps to shield their customers from being picked off.
Yeah.
If you're just going from your car in a parking lot into the store, people were walking in zigzag line. I mean, it was very terrifying
Yeah.
because
And
you had
that's
these
it's
people out
infectious.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to the to the podcast, and it kind of goes. I mean, it tells you the story, of course, first, and then it goes into what actually were making these guys. What created them to actually do this? You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
And it's very fascinating to learn, why John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo started doing what they did. And you come to find out about their lives, and you come to find out that breaking point, that instant to where that human being just couldn't, they had lost everything, and couldn't take it anymore, and in their mind there was only one way out, or one decision to make, or one thing to do, and they just didn't care anymore about their own lives. And for John Allen Muhammad, of course he recruited this young kid, kind of brainwashed him into doing what he wanted. But it took him losing his kids, his wife divorcing him, his becoming homeless, losing everything that he had, to try to get back at this woman who he knew lived in a certain area, but he wasn't sure exactly where. So he decided, and he formulated a plan to terrorize an entire area just to get back at his wife for divorcing him and taking his kids away from him. And basically, he looked at her like his whole life was ruined because of this woman. When in fact he couldn't really lay it on himself and his own actions.
Yeah, it's kind of like it. It also reminds me of that film Falling Down.
Oh yeah, well, Michael Douglas, where he just
where he snaps, where
he's had enough that day and just snaps. Yeah,
everything falls apart. And that really is, in some ways how people can be, and that's why I picked the title Human Time Bomb, because essentially that's what it is. It's a series of triggers, and then eventually they explode, and we see it over and over. And I think another thing I discuss in the book, while there are many good things about technology and communication, one of several bad things that has come along with it is detachment and the reduction of socialization, normal socialization, where people are actually getting together with people and sitting down and looking into other people's eyes and getting the natural cues that you require to be able to connect with people, to feel as though, it's like there's one article I read where it talks about the difference between a need and a want. When you want something, there's no real bad effects from not having it. When like, let's say you want a cheeseburger. If you want a cheeseburger, you're not going to die if you don't get a cheeseburger. You're going to be okay for a couple days. You'll live if you don't get the cheeseburger. You want it. But if you need it, like not a cheeseburger, but food, if you don't have it, you'll die. If you don't have it, you're in pain. It's the same with social interaction. While you might want to go online and you want to talk to a bunch of different people without actually having to leave your house, you need to leave your house. You need to interact with people in person, or you're not going to get that part of interaction that we as humans need to be stable. And
right. Hopefully we've evolved enough, because I can understand, like, say, for instance, hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, wants and needs are different than now. You needed to protect, your family, your offspring. You needed to eat, and to want it and need it is a totally different animal as well.
Yeah, I just think there's certainly a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of understandable confusion, because we are now in a position where I'd say it's 25 years we've really been enmeshed in internet culture, online culture, where technology is now becoming not just a convenience, but is augmenting parts of our lives and becoming permanent in some parts of our lives, replacing certain jobs that aren't going to come back, changing the amount of people that are being born, because less people are leaving their parents' houses, getting married, having kids.
Right.
This is a widespread series of different things that's happening that can't be accounted for, that we didn't know were going to happen, and that we have no research about the end result. We've thrown ourselves into this technological revolution without understanding what it's doing to us, and what are the worst results going to be. We don't know. We haven't done the research.
Yeah, even I can even tell too, with my own children, having been born into a technologically advanced environment, I guess you could say, that they're not as socially outgoing
Yeah.
as say we were when we were kids.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
that's.
I mean,
I was
we
just going to
couldn't
say
wait
that.
to get out of the damn house and go to our friend's house and play and roam the neighborhood and now you almost have to bribe your kids to go hang out with their friends, or it's awkward because the friends' parents don't want anybody at their house, or it's just weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's antisocial. It really is. There are useful benefits to, like, and I don't want people to think that I'm just saying technology is bad. It's not. There's great things in technology, but there's also bad things, and there's things that we didn't anticipate. And if we don't, first of all, admit them, a lot of people don't even want to do that. We have to admit that there are bad parts of this, and then we need to correct. We can't just, it's all going to be great. We'll just wait for the next version of the app and that'll fix it. No, it's not going to happen. And they're not going to do it. These companies are not going to be like, please stop using our addicted applications.
Because they're
We
making
don't
money
want
off
you to
it.
give us yeah, exactly. They have a profit motive. So they're not going to stop. They're going to try to push more and newer and faster. And people's attention spans are getting shorter. They're becoming more detached. That's
Well,
not
you can
good.
tell that going to a store or going to a restaurant and trying to talk to younger people. They just have no idea of what to say if they say anything. They're like robots,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, and for adults, that's their own decision if they want to thrust themselves into it. But the advice that I would give parents is, if you can't stand taking it away, put the phone away most of the time. They don't need it. They should be out there engaging in play with other people their age. They should be developing skills. They should be reading. They should be doing anything but staring at that phone for hours on end.
Yeah, and
Because
actually talk instead of text, and
yeah,
you know,
yeah, make real
send a note.
social relationships.
Yeah, write, read. I mean, all that stuff is going by the wayside, and in favor of doing everything online, and meeting people online, having friends online, and like you said, not all of it's bad, but there has to be a healthy balance to it.
And yes, certainly. There has to be a healthy balance, and I think people don't appreciate the consequences. And we're starting to see the long-term consequences. And it's not just, well, people aren't going to be talking as much, people aren't going to be going out as much. It's also a huge spike, like 30% in males and 70% in females, of suicide rates from these generations, of
Yeah, because they feel
violence.
isolated and
Exactly.
alone.
Well, they are.
They are.
Anybody that is online most of the time is alone. It's a pseudo reality. It's not real. All those social media applications are good to help with communication, but they cannot establish and maintain a real human relationship. You have to actually talk to the person.
That's why a lot of these like famous YouTubers and stuff commit suicide, or musicians that can't, or famous people, because you think, well, man, they got the greatest life ever. They're making all this money, but they're really, really isolated,
Hmm.
and they can't do anything. They can't trust anybody, and they feel no other alternative but to just off themselves.
I
And
I certainly think that that's yeah that explains some of them, and it's not going away. Is why I think it's the most important thing that beyond the admission of dealing with this. If we don't, it's just going to keep expanding. Now we're starting to see people in older age brackets that aren't from this one, group of people that we're seeing the uprise, starting to have their own problems, becoming addicted. So this isn't going to get less; it's going to worsen. It's not going to lessen; it's going to worsen. So we have to talk about it. We have to be honest about it, and we have to discuss that these companies know what's going on.
yeah,
They're
they're
not
not going to
ignorant.
care as long as they're making money. They don't care.
Well, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
eventually, if it is shown that some of these companies did this intentionally, knowing the effects, well, they're going to care because they're going to get sued.
Yeah, but just like the cigarette industry, it's never
Yeah,
going
yeah.
away. I
Well,
mean,
exactly.
it's
Yeah, they'll defend and they'll push. The
yeah,
point is, though, I think the best what we can do, good, good luck on that end. But the best that we can do is protect ourselves, and that's what my book is aimed at doing. Is that trying to show people, and that we have to understand that this is a long. Violence has always been with us, and it probably always will be with us. It's not that we can get rid of all the violence. That isn't going to happen. There's never going to be a utopia, but we can reduce it, and we can certainly try to knock out some of the sources of unnecessary violence. And unfortunately, parts of social media feed it. They feed unnecessary aggression and violence and people trying to destroy each other because it's all set up like a game, which appeals to us as primates. It's all with Facebook, like and unlike. If you're angry, if you're mad, it's all instantaneous emotion. You get to just pump out whenever you feel like it, and you don't think of it as having any sort of real effect on you.
Yeah,
But over
no
time,
repercussions.
yeah, but it does. You're affecting real people's lives, including your own. And on Twitter, you can step it up even worse. Not that this can't happen on Facebook, but on Twitter, daily careers are dashed and destroyed. People's lives are ruined. People are doxxed and gone after in real life just because they had a disagreement with someone they've never met online.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's,
very, very real, scary stuff, man.
yeah, it's crazy. We have to distinguish. We have to show, or at least most people, I hope, can show themselves that this isn't real. Social media is a tool, and sometimes you set the tool down, and when the tool's hurting you, you don't use it anymore.
And that is sound advice, my friend. So tell everybody where they can get your new book, Human Time Bomb.
They can find it on Amazon, and if you want to find out more details, some of the reviews, and some excerpts, you can go to tpaak.com, tpaak.com.
And TPAAK, right?
Yep, tpaak.com.
.com for everything else, Carmine Savastano, correct?
Yep, there's over, 80 or 90 research articles now I've gotten.
Yeah, and I recommend you read every damn one of them, people.
Thanks, man.
Well, Carmine, it's always a pleasure having you back on the show. It's been a while, too long once again. Unless you're going to be writing another book relatively quickly, let's do it sooner than later this time.
Okay, great, man. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to coming back on, and I appreciate it. I hope everybody found it interesting, and thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. I'm glad you made it on the show, buddy. Hang out for me for a second while I talk us out of here, folks. Follow me on Twitter. Don't dox me at the Lone Gunman 7. You can also check out tlgpodcast.blogspot.com, where you can find all the episodes of the show and quick hits and a bunch of links that you might be interested in if you're interested in the assassination. Also, just started the Lone Gunman now I'm forgetting the damn URL of this thing, but it's a forum for topics of the show, for discussion, where people can feel free to join. And I can't even find it, but anyway, go on Facebook and you can find the link on the Lone Gunman podcast page for the forum. And I encourage everyone to join and participate. And we might probably not get anywhere, but that's okay. As with most forums. But hopefully there will be good information shared there at some point. It's still in its infancy, so bear with. But that's it for now. My thanks to my guest Carmine, and make sure you check out his new book, Human Time Bomb. That's it for this one, folks. Peace.